It's Brendan and Bryan talk NFL Draft episode 3, and this is a unique one. I don't know that I've ever done this. College radio, professional radio. I am recording a podcast that has been recorded already. We did this once, but we had echo, so I didn't publish it. And to make matters worse, we were having issues because that was my first time messing with video. We actually recorded the start of that podcast 3 separate times. So I've done this podcast.
Yes, we did.
Thankfully, we put a week and a half or so in between. Some things have changed. So this episode, we're going to talk about Lions draft scenarios. I think there's really only 3 in play. It's Jeff Okudah, trade down, Chase Young. And the thing that's changed the most since we first recorded this is the trade down, I believe. When we recorded this about a week and a half ago, I think trade down was the most likely. You, Bryan, were pretty overwhelmingly in favor of, not in favor of, but you thought it was pretty clearly the most likely. And now we're seeing all over the place people saying, I want to say Dave Burkett was told that Tua could be there at 18, meaning it would make no sense for Miami to come up. I just read today Miami was possibly looking to come up to 3 ahead of the Giants and take a tackle. That situation as a whole has changed a lot.
That's crazy.
Over the last week or two.
And around this time of year, you just don't know what to believe, you know? So, I mean, is it a smokescreen, or is it, like I heard rumblings last year that Daniel Jones was going to the Giants, and I was like, no, they're not that dumb, no. So, I mean, who knows?
Well, I think a lot of it, most of the things you hear this late in the year or this late towards the draft are BS, but some of it's real.
Sure.
And one thing that makes me feel better about the Lions' chances of trading down is the supposed idea that both Miami and the Chargers are happy with whatever quarterback comes to them. They're okay with Herbert or Tua. I don't buy that.
I don't either.
That's just not real. That doesn't happen. I've been following the draft pretty closely now for probably close to 10 years, and I can never recall a team that was like, whatever quarterback's there is cool. They find their guy, and he's their guy.
You're telling me that in all of sports, the most important position, you have a top 5 pick, and you're just okay with either one of them, especially 2 quarterbacks that are so different from each other. That is bullcrap. I am not buying that at all.
And that's the thing. If you told me that Miami prefers Herbert, sure. But I'm with you. So that I don't buy at all. That makes me think that it is smokescreen, someone trying to bring down the price of 2. And we talked about this last time. I think we differed on what that price for 2 would be. And I've been asked by some people, do you think there's any chance they get 2 first? I don't think that's in play at all. I don't know where you're at.
No, I don't either.
I think the most that's in play would be the second from Miami, because you got to think, especially if it's Miami. If it's Miami trading up to 3, they're drafting a quarterback. So you're not losing anything there. You're really only trading back essentially 1 spot. Honestly, a second might be kind of high.
You look at a couple years ago, the Jets traded up to the Colts spot to get their quarterback, and Sam Darnold, and I think they gave up 3 seconds. So, I mean, I could see a second here. Definitely.
Yeah, no. I think a second. If Miami were to trade up, I think a second is what it would be. But I think you could make the case that the Lions would actually be getting out with a steal on that, because if you trade back to 3, there's just not a whole lot of change. I think Okudah is the most likely scenario at 3. And we'll talk about that. But he's more than likely going to be there at 5. And even if he's not, let's say he goes off the board at 3, he's the only other player you would have considered who goes off the board. I'm not at 3, I'm sorry, at 4. He's the only other player. So, I like Simmons a lot. I don't think the Lions are going to be interested because of Jamie Collins, but I like Simmons a lot. Derek Brown's another value guy there. You're not changing your situation very much by moving back.
No.
6, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know about you, Bryan. I'm not even really looking at 6, and that's maybe not fair. In my head, they've said Tyrod Taylor's their starting quarterback. I don't believe that they're happy with Tyrod Taylor as their starting quarterback, but I can buy that they're not dead set on going and getting their guy early. Because like I think that I think we talked about this too. We disagree on quarterbacks. Like I think Jordan Love could fall to the second, or even just the late first if they want to come back up then. Or I guess really he's the only other one that comes to mind for me. Who is the one that Jalen Hurts? I don't think he'll go top second, but like I could see them going that route and letting somebody kind of battle it out with Tyrod Taylor, because I think that's what Tyrod Taylor is in the league. Like Tyrod Taylor, I don't know that being behind Phillip Rivers last year was the right place for him. Like I think he's a guy who should fight with your starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the Chargers case, how I look at it is you have the sixth overall pick. You do have enough draft capital to trade up to get that guy. So if you really fall in love with either Tua or Herbert, why would you risk, drafting a guy in the second round like Love, who I don't think will be there, or any of these other guys, Jacob Eason or Hurts, if you don't think he's the guy? Like this is the most important position on your team. If you don't believe in your guy, don't even waste the second round draft pick on him. I genuinely think that the Chargers are going to be the team that trades up, because it's not just about the player.
You can make the case the incentive is actually there for them more, but we keep talking like
sure.
When I say we, I don't just mean me and you. Like I think the national narrative is way more about Miami than it is about LA.
Yeah, and I think that's only because they have the draft capital. They have
so many,
but it's what they're willing. Yeah, it's what they're willing to give up. They don't even have to. They're willing to give up.
In reality, Miami's not jumping a quarterback needy team. If Miami makes a trade, all they're doing is making sure the Chargers don't.
Yes. And I mean, is it possible? I think it's possible that the Chargers might even go for Jordan Love at 6. I honestly, I know it's kind of crazy, but
you're right.
Also,
and that's why I don't believe the narrative of they're both okay with whoever, because we've seen way too many times that teams will make a move for like an EJ Manuel. At the end of the day, there is no I'm okay with my quarterback. Like they find their guy.
Right,
and was EJ Manuel even a day 2? He might have been a day 2, but like he wasn't even a second round projected pick, was he? Like I think we were talking about him being like a third round or maybe late second round kind of quarterback. And
I was very surprised when he was picked.
So and that's the most wild one that comes to mind. But there's been some other.
But I mean, even Pat Mahomes was not considered to be a surefire.
And they traded up for him, didn't they?
They did, yeah. So once again, it shows the Chiefs didn't like Trubisky enough to trade up for him. Imagine that. But they wanted their guy in Mahomes. They went out and got him. So if you're a quarterback needy team and you're worried about using picks to trade up, does anyone remember what the Chiefs gave up for Patrick Mahomes?
Not a clue.
Does anyone care? It doesn't matter. They got their guy. So if you really believe that this is your guy, if you really believe that Tua or Herbert is your guy, then I really don't. I think there's a good chance the Lions still get something for that.
Now,
pick.
Before we move on to specifically taking a look at Jeff Okudah and how we feel about that, I want to just consider any other possibilities. Are there any other teams that maybe have slipped under the radar that we could consider trading up to 3? The quarterback needy team that I've continued to bring up, although to be fair, I admit that they're less needy than I originally thought when I mentioned it, is the Jaguars. Gardner Minshew was better than I thought he was, like from memory, but I think some of that was how hot he started versus how he finished. If they really believe in a guy, I don't think you have to stick with him. It's not like you're paying him. Somebody would take him too, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but with Minshew, let's imagine that Gardner Minshew was not a 7th round pick. He didn't have a mustache.
Whoa! The mustache we can keep the mustache. That's not affecting anything.
But what I'm saying is that I think a lot of what he was getting was just hype. People wanted to see Gardner Minshew play because he was a 7th round pick from Washington State with a mustache. Like, I think if you put Gardner Minshew in the 4th round, I think people are very underwhelmed with how he played.
Yeah, so
that's just me.
I'm not telling you they're going to trade up. I just they feel to me like an underrated quarterback landing spot. I would have thought the Raiders, because they have the capital as well, and they don't believe in Derek Carr as far as I can tell. But it's hard to imagine that they're going to go into the season with 3 potential starters because they signed Mariota.
Right. Yeah, the Raiders, I feel like, are more poised to draft someone in the second or third round.
And the only other team to me that is interesting and not discussed a lot, but I think it's interesting, is the Patriots. At 23, it would be a
Yes.
massive jump. You'd have to imagine you're talking at least next year's first and maybe a second. Um,
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if you're the Lions, you're sitting there at three. I would accept nothing less than next year's first, which is probably going to be a late
right. You figure
first.
20s
Um,
maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say that.
23.
If they're coming up to get a Tua or a Herbert, are they in
Yeah.
the 20s still next year with a rookie quarterback on that team? Because that's
That's
what
a
I'm like
good
now
point.
thinking through it, and I'm like, they have some holes. If what they're spending their first on is a
Yeah,
quarterback, it might not be that bad of a pick.
I mean, that's a fair point. I mean,
It's not going to be a
I
good
think
pick. It won't be
Belichick,
top 10.
no, no, I mean, I think that Belichick um, I think Belichick believes that he could take the ghost of Mike McMahon and make him a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Like, I think he's just that confident
And
in.
I don't believe it would be a top 10 pick, but maybe it's actually late teens. Maybe they
No,
missed the
I don't
playoffs
either.
by a little bit.
I could see late
Yeah.
teens.
Um,
Yeah,
is I know we've talked off recording quite a while back. For me, like I don't want to move out of the top five, and that hasn't changed. I wouldn't want to move that far unless you're getting, two firsts and a second wouldn't do it. Two firsts and two
right.
seconds might be getting
No, I
close.
agree.
Um,
Yep.
but so that's not. Is it in play for you? Like you think that that's a surprise we could get?
I don't. I think for one thing, if I'm thinking like Bill Belichick, okay, he lets go of Tom Brady, which is a total pride issue. He is he believes he's the architect of everything, and Brady's just kind of a quarterback that helped him get there. I think he's going to roll with Jarrett Stidham. I think it looks bad on Bill Belichick to let go of Tom Brady and then jump real fast, almost in a panicky move, and then draft a quarterback. Now, I think he's going to sit this one out. I think he's going to say, hey, you know what? I can win with Jarrett
We've
Stidham.
been
And I
hearing
actually really like
We've
him.
been hearing for a while that they do like Jarrett Stidham. They did sign Brian Hoyer, who's a
Yeah.
backup. I think that they feel comfortable with as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think they'll trade up. I'm not. I'm very open to the possibility if a guy like Herbert falls that they would go that route and maybe trade up later, but like
Sure.
not
Oh,
all
yeah.
the way up to
Yep.
three. Um,
No, I agree. I mean, if Herbert starts to fall into the 13, 14, 15 area, then I could see them trying to trade up.
Now I believe this guy will still be there if the Lions trade back to five, probably six, but maybe a little bit more of a question. But let's talk specifically about Jeff Okudah, who is probably the most likely pick. Should they
Yeah.
stay at three? Where are you at on him?
I love Jeff Okuda. Unfortunately, I watched a lot of Ohio State football this past fall, and he's the best cornerback that I've seen since Patrick Peterson, and I think you're getting that around the league as
I
well.
mean,
People who know what they're talking about, they
if you're not hearing
they love
that,
this
the one
guy.
thing that I've heard a lot of is he's the best Ohio State cornerback we've seen in a long time. And when you look at the list of Ohio State cornerbacks that have,
It's huge.
yeah, they have turned out a lot of defensive backs in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a guy who's even as good as Marshawn Lattimore is for the Saints, I mean, that's pretty darn good. I'll take that any day.
Something I think you do need to consider sometimes is like the hit rate of certain positions at certain spots in the draft. And I don't have any numbers in front of me. I remember seeing it last year that corners good enough to go in the top 10 are usually pretty special. It's rare you see corners go in the
Yeah.
top 10 and struggle. Now, they may struggle in year one. And this thing I do want to say is, and I've talked about this before on other podcasts, for me, Okuda at 3 is a little underwhelming. And it's not because I don't like Okuda. I like Okuda a lot. Like, I really, really like the top of this draft. There's not, like, I really like Okuda. I really like Chase Young. I really like Joe Burrow. I really like Isaiah Simmons. I really like Derek Brown. And Derek Brown might fall a little bit, but like those five, I think are like my five. And Derek Brown is a guy I would have liked to see them take if they didn't already go and address the nose tackle position.
Yeah.
But what's underwhelming is that Darius Slay was on the roster last year, and
I
so
know.
it just feels like this is a team that's supposed to be winning, and to go out and replace Darius Slay. Now they got Desmond Trufant, who's I think a capable number one. Probably a really good number two, but like I just don't. I don't think there's any way you're better at cornerback next year. And it's tough to go in with a number 3 pick in a good draft and say we're not better at that position than we were last year. Like, if you get Chase Young, you're going to be far superior rushing the passer than to what you were last year. It's hard for me at 3 to not be better at what we were last year.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I would be, if I'm sitting there at 3 and the Lions don't trade down at all and they pick Okudah, I would be
He is the right
for
pick,
sure.
Though, right? We're assuming it goes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, okay, let's play devil's advocate here. If you're sitting at 3 and you get to number 3, there's no one calling, which I think the trades are already in personally. I don't think anyone's taking a chance at the draft, with all this communication issues that could go on.
Bob Quinn did say if he was going to make a trade, he would want it agreed to before the draft. And I don't know this to be the case, but I would assume as somebody who follows the draft, he doesn't mean the trade needs to be like official before the draft, because that's not the way it works.
Right, no.
Normally trades are talked about and often agreed to given certain circumstances, and because I think some people think, okay, the moment the draft starts, Bob Quinn will not make a trade. And that's not how I read that.
No, I agree. I think if someone calls
but anyways,
it's stupid not to listen.
Continuing to play devil's advocate. So you get to the 3, no one's calling.
Yeah, you're at 3. No one's calling at all. Is there, you do have more value, in the left tackle position at that spot. So no one's calling. Do you draft one of the top tackles in the draft, like Tristan Wirfs or
Can you imagine if Bob Quinn takes another offensive lineman?
He would get murdered. But if you do that, you take the guy, you put him at left tackle. Taylor Decker is on a 1-year deal. You slide him over to right, and then you put Big V at the right guard spot. Then all of a sudden, your offensive line looks pretty darn good. I don't know if I'd advocate that, but to me, it's a little more, I don't know, filling than drafting a corner.
So I won't say I won't say that. I won't say it's more filling for me. But here's what's going to happen. It happens every draft. As long as the Lions don't go totally off script here, I may have issues with it on draft day, but they will be players that I'm capable of being excited about when the season comes around. Like, I will be excited about Okudah when the season comes around. I would be excited about Simmons or Derek Brown, or, like you mentioned, like an Andrew Thomas, a left tackle. Any of those guys. As long as they don't do something crazy, when the season comes around, I will be excited about those guys because the guys at the top are really good.
Yeah.
Now, I like Okudah a lot, so if you could get back to 5 and add a second, they already have 2/3. So, like, if they're able to get anything else and take Okudah, like, that changes everything for me. I don't even need a lot more. Like, just a second plus Okudah. Now I feel really good because you're getting who I think – I don't know. I don't know if I prefer Okudah or Simmons. I think Okudah feels safer to me.
Given the roster where it's at now, I would rather have Okudah. But Simmons he's so versatile. You could play him at safety, at linebacker. He's a linebacker who runs a 4.39.
I was trying to think, like, do I think Okudah is the best player on the board at 3? And I don't know if I prefer him or Simmons. It's between the two.
That's a great question.
I think I do think he's the best player on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think where the NFL is at, I think a shutdown corner is more valuable than a linebacker anyways.
Now, I do actually want to, maybe at the end as we wrap this up, dig a little bit into your idea of offensive line. Because we didn't talk about that the first time we recorded this, and I actually think it's an interesting thought. But first, let's go into one more scenario. A scenario that I think felt more likely. It definitely felt more likely months ago. Probably felt more likely weeks ago. I think we're starting to, like, really not see it coming. But the possibility somebody trades to 2 for a Tua or a Herbert, and Chase Young falls to 3. Where would you be on that? Is that your number one?
I mean, I'm going to say no. And the only reason for that is because, one, I respect and love Jeff Okudah. But really the big reason is that if I get an extra second-round pick, at the very least by doing that, I am getting one of the draft's best corners that have come out in 10 years and I'm adding a second, which gives me more flexibility with 2 seconds and
And
two
two,
thirds.
and it's
One, I
important to
could
note it would
just,
be 2 high seconds.
yeah. I mean, um, it, then you're giving yourself flexibility, trading back up into the first round if you wanted to get, I don't know, you wanted to get maybe like a Cesar Ruiz to fill in that guard spot on your line, or you could go up and get one of the draft's best receivers. It just gives you so much more flexibility. I'm really intrigued by that. So if you start to see a guy falling, now all of a sudden you have the
I,
ammunition to go back and get that
I'm really
guy.
torn between what I prefer more of trading back and hopefully getting Okuda, or take having Chase Young fall to you at 3. Um, Chase Young just feels like such a surefire lock pass rusher,
Yeah,
and I tend to be like I tend to value, and maybe it's because it's the only way I've ever seen the Lions be really good back in 2014. I value the guys, the defenses that get to the quarterback. I think those defenses, and you pointed out in one of the previous drafts or podcasts that I was a Giants fan growing up too, and like how did they win? They went one getting to the quarterback. So like that's what I
yeah,
want to see in a defense, and Chase Young like single handedly comes in and gives you a lot more of that. I
yeah.
do wonder a little bit, just a little bit, how he would be affected by playing in the Patricia defense, where you don't ever send more than 3 people ever. Um, I don't know. Like I don't know. That is something I wonder. I mean, Jamie Collins is a pass rusher,
It's
so
a
you'd
good
hope they're
point.
going to start blitzing uh,
Right.
linebackers, but I'm not. I don't. I'm not willing to say that comfortably. Whenever you see like, I follow a lot of like charts and graphs guys on Twitter who like, Brian, you see it in a group chat with me. How often I'm
Yeah.
sending like I like to send, um, pictures that people have basically looked through the NFL and seen trends, and basically the Lions don't care about pass rush pressure, and so it makes me a little nervous about how Chase Young would do. But you know what, Brian? I said this on another podcast as well. I also think you have to look at it and say, do you believe this regime's going to be here 2, 3, 4 years from now?
And that's a great
So,
point.
so to some
No,
extent, you have to
there's no
ask,
way.
like, does it matter how Chase Young or Jeff Okuda does under Matt Patricia? How will they do with the next guy?
Right.
And Chase Young, I guess that's the
Right.
thing. Like, I believe Chase Young is a can't miss pass rusher. And
Yeah.
think of the recent can't miss pass rushers. Who are the can't miss pass rushers that did miss? There's not, there's not many.
There really isn't
Like,
much. No. I
those guys
mean,
have hit.
you could you could almost make a case. I'm probably going to get flack for this, but you could almost make the case that Jadeveon Clowney was a can't miss, and he's underwhelmed. His numbers have
He's been
reached.
in the
He's
NFL.
not
He's almost
really
been a
a
better run stopper than a pass rusher.
yeah,
I mean, he's been fine as a pass
yeah,
rusher, but like his bread and butter has been the run stop.
right. Yeah, so I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I love Chase Young. It's like 1A and 1B for me. I would be thrilled with
Let
either
let me
scenario.
float out a.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm thinking of who might be available at the end of that draft that you can maybe trade back up to get AJ Epinenza, who I think would fit really well in this, no pass rush defense that our brilliant coaches cooked
My
up.
dad asked me this question the other day
Um,
because he's seen that people have
yeah,
C.J. Henderson over Jeff Okuda. Some teams supposedly do. You haven't seen that?
I did hear that.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
dad asked the question: could the Lions trade back into a place where they would get C.J. Henderson? I don't think that's really in play, but could if they were to try and trade back up in, is there a world where they take CJ? It's hard to see it because if they trade down, they're probably getting Okuda. I don't. My
yeah,
dad asked
I
that
agree.
question,
I
so I
mean, I
want to
think
float
the
it out there.
the only scenario I could see that happening with is if the Jags took 9 and 20 and moved up. Because then you're at number
But
9, then you're in a prime position to draft CJ Henderson. So
I was trying to help you think of guys who could fall, and the thing is, like the top of this
yeah,
draft has a lot of cornerbacks. But if you take Okuda, you're
for
not
sure.
going up and getting another cornerback.
No, I mean, I think, like I said, I think the only way that would happen is if the Jags traded up. But then at 9, who's to say that you don't get Javon Kinlaw, which I would be
Oh, I like
thrilled with.
yeah, I
I
like Kinlaw a
love
lot
Javon
too.
Kinlaw. So now this is an interesting scenario then. Okay, so would you rather have Javon Kinlaw and maybe Christian Fulton, at 20? with the Jags' other pick, or Trayvon Diggs, or
Or Chase Young.
insert whatever corner. What's that?
Or Chase Young.
Yeah,
It's
or Chase
funny when
Young.
you present it that way. Because I just said like 5 minutes ago I don't want to trade back past 5. But like I think you just
Yeah.
presented a damn near dream scenario. Like now we don't neither of us
uh,
believe the Jags are going to come up. But that
no,
scenario
no, I
is
don't.
is you want to talk about filling.
It's
You want to
interesting.
talk about filling.
Yeah,
That's a filling scenario. Um,
I would be very happy with that.
doesn't it feel like on some level, outside of Bob Quinn blowing our minds like he did when he took Jelani Tavai, who nobody had heard of, unless he does that in the first round, it almost feels like there's no way you can leave this. Like, you might leave draft day upset, but 3 months from now, you're going to be excited for that guy. No matter Chase Young, Jeff Okudah, trade back, even like even honestly, even at 3, if it goes Burrow, Young, and they go offensive linemen like you talked about, and let's start to move towards that. Like, Bob Quinn would get killed if he goes offensive lineman,
He would get murdered,
and I would
destroyed.
be a part of that. To be fair,
I'm even like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm getting anxiety because I'm like, oh my gosh, it could happen.
outside of taking tight end, is there anything he could do that would be like more damaging to his reputation?
Oh boy, I mean,
Running
first of
back,
all, tight end is off. If they draft a tight
they
end,
won't.
oh
They
my
won't.
gosh, they won't. But it's
That's what I'm saying, though.
it's a
It's
good
the only thing
question.
that's in play that would be damaging because now you'd have Frank Ragnow first,
Yeah,
Taylor Decker first, Andrew Thomas first.
yeah,
They let Glasgow walk third. Travis
yeah,
Swanson was his pick, I believe, too. Third. You
yeah.
signed T.J. Lang in free agency with some big money. You signed Rick Wagner. That's 7 offensive linemen who you've invested serious capital into. And
hmm
I don't know why, but offensive tackle doesn't feel as safe to me. Okuda and Young both feel a lot safer to me than any offensive tackle in this draft.
I agree with that. I mean, I think Okuda overall is the better player, but traditionally when you look at the draft, top 5 picks, quarterbacks, offensive tackles, defensive ends, and that's kind of what I always think of. Like, it just seems to be more, I guess, more value. Would you rather have a top offensive tackle who is going to be like on your line for 10 years, a Jeff Backus, but actually good? Um,
It's funny you say
or would
that.
you
It's really
rather?
funny you say that because I'm also doing a 2011 Lions rewatch. And one thing that
Okay.
has really stood out to me is like the Lions in 2011 when they made the playoffs for the first time in a long time had a weird offensive line that was like Raiola and Backus were both there forever, but like how the hell was Jeff Backus a career long left tackle for one team?
I mean, everyone made fun of him. I don't know how he lasted so long. Who else was the line on that team?
Uh,
Now I'm
so
curious.
it was left tackle was Taylor Decker, right tackle was Gadisha Cheerless, um,
Oh god.
center was Dominic Raiola. One of the guards was Steven Peterman. I
Wow.
don't know who the other guard was. Um, but speaking of a guy like Goddard Shearless, maybe that's why like I
Yeah.
feel so like unsafe with offensive tackle. We've actually seen the Lions on some level. You have to give the Lions GMs post Millen credit in how much they have invested in offensive line. They failed to find the right guys.
For sure.
Goddard
Right.
Shearless. Now that I think about it, he was post Millen, right? I'm actually not
I
100% sure
think
anymore.
so.
But Goddard Shearless,
I
fail. Riley Reef, fail. Taylor
Yes.
Decker. I'm not one to call Taylor Decker a fail, but like he's not.
Underwhelming,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Frank Ragnall's been a good pick at center, and they've had some Swanson and Glasgow were both valuable in the third round. But like when I've seen them go first round linemen, I just haven't ever been impressed. Like I'm scarred. And I'm
Yeah.
scarred a lot of ways as a Lions fan. But drafting tackles in the
Yeah.
first round apparently is one of them.
I just no, I agree. I mean, as a growing up as a Lions fan during the Millen era, I don't remember them picking an offensive
No,
lineman.
it's still wide
Like I just don't
receivers.
remember one. Yeah, I was just oh my
And
gosh.
let Jeff Backus
You
start for
got
15 years because apparently that's a thing that you do.
And then you got, your second round picks were Ikaika Alama Francis and Jordan Dizon. And I mean,
Jordan
I don't
Dizon was good
remember.
until he tore his ACL in Pittsburgh. I was there when it happened.
Oh, come
The last
on.
game of his
Jordan
career.
Dizon was terrible.
We are going
I
so off
just,
script here, but it's fine. I'm having fun.
yeah, we are a little bit.
Where the hell?
But,
How did we
like,
get here? Talking about
I
being
don't
scared of
know.
drafting offensive linemen. That was how we got there,
See,
Brian.
like, most NFL fans talk about their team's glory days. We just talk about failed mill and draft picks.
Yeah.
That's what the
No,
Lions have.
reminiscing about the draft is it's
Yeah.
therapeutic in a way. Because it's
Mhm.
funny. It is funny to talk about. Let's kind of wrap it up here. I want to do two things. First, rank your
Yeah.
scenarios of the top three we talked about. So that is trade down,
Okay.
draft Okuda, draft Chase Young. In terms of what you want, not what's
Okay.
most likely.
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I think I'm going to do the trade down scenario and pick Akuda first. I think it's the most pick if you're going to trade down. I think picking Akuda is by far the most likely scenario. As much as I would love to get the Jags 9 and 20 picks, pick Javon Kinlaw and whoever else. I don't think it's happening. So I would love that extra ammo to go into the second round and either sit there, pick two high quality players, get yourself a defensive
You're
end
definitely picking a
maybe,
wide receiver
and
if you have two second round draft picks and don't move up.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, depending on who's available, but I love Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State. I think he's going to be awesome. Um, or even Jonathan Taylor is there. Hey, I'd be awesome
I
with
love
that.
Ryan's Lions
Jonathan
second
Taylor would
round
be
running backs.
sick.
They all do really well.
Mikel LaSure.
I know he wasn't technically.
Javin Best
I count
technically.
him as a second round draft pick because they had to trade a second to go and get him.
That's okay. That's fair.
Kerryon Johnson was a second. He's been fine when he's on the field. If he was good enough, you wouldn't be talking about drafting Jonathan Taylor.
That's yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, I think he is good enough, but like the injury concerns, it's
So
crazy.
it's
They just have bad
it's trade
luck.
down, then Chase Young, then Jeff Okuda.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd be just super
All
underwhelmed,
right,
and I think it's becoming more and more likely.
same for me. Same order. Three would be underwhelming. Like I can get myself excited about Okuda because I do think in time he becomes a lockdown corner. I just want to watch a good Lions football
Yeah,
team again, and I don't think he helps that
I
happen.
know.
And the final thing I want to do, Brian, just very casual,
Mm.
almost talk about therapeutic. How are you feeling about the Lions draft as we sit just 2 days away? The whole thing, not just the first round.
Um, I was pretty angry with the Darius Slay trade. I understood why they did. Oh, I actually no, I don't understand why. I hate them. Um, but picking up that extra third, it does make me feel a little bit more warm inside. This is going to be a deep draft, especially at corner
It's a good draft to
and
have an
wide
extra third.
receiver. It is for sure, and like I said, if you do trade down, you've got so much ammo to trade up. So I'm actually very cautiously optimistic. I think that there's a good chance we do trade down still,
Can
and
you use the word
I'm
very before cautiously optimistic? It's already playing against itself.
I know that's yeah
What
that's
you mean is I'm very optimistic, but I'm cautious, and those two things kind of don't work too well
that's
together.
probably yeah that's probably a better order of words there. Um, I'm nervous just because it's Bob Quinn. You know, that's it. He just hasn't shown that he's able to draft
I
well.
would. I mean, I'm excited for the draft as a thing because we don't have anything to talk about in sports. It gives us something to care about.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
be a lot more excited about the Lions draft in particular if they do find a way to get an extra second. Um, as it looks, though, I'm always a big believer. You should go into every draft expecting your first, second, and third round draft pick to be a starter at least by the end of the year. They don't need to be starting by day
yeah,
one. And if you go quarterback in the second round or third round, I don't mind as much if you're planning on giving them a year. But outside of that, like they should be expected to be starting before the year's over. So that means I think the
yeah.
Lions should go into the draft expecting to pick up 4 starters minimum. And they've already had so much of a rework. Like there's so many new starters with all the stuff they've done in free agency. Um,
Not to interrupt you, but
Go
what I
ahead.
feel like the Lions GM, what I feel like it is if like you're building a log house, and then so they're building it up, and then they take 3 logs away, and then next year they start building it up again, and then they take 4 logs away. Like that's how I feel like this front office is doing it. So I would agree because this team has so many holes. I think that I would agree. I think 3 to 4 starters
I have a
out of this draft right away.
I have a hard time using the word excited, which is what gets me stuck in where I'm feeling. What I like
Yeah.
is that, and I've talked about this before, I like that going into next season, the Lions are going to have so many new, hand-picked, for Matt Patricia pieces from Bob Quinn. 4 of them at least should be coming in this draft. And so I'm comforted by that because it means if it doesn't work, it's harder to scapegoat. I'm comforted by knowing, as much as I don't like Matt Patricia, he's losing excuses in this draft.
That's interesting. I never thought of that actually. That's a great point.
That's as a Bryan, as a very optimistic person in everything. That's about as optimistic as I get on this. I have a hard time using the word optimistic. I have a hard time using the word excited. Comforted. Comfort is the word I feel, which, to be honest, it's not the worst. I feel like this Lions draft is a nice warm blanket on a cold day.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right.
We literally have nothing else
No,
to
and
watch. So.
at some level, I think it's like mentally comforting just because I have something to care about.
ESPN was showing the 1989 NFL draft. I was like,
I
what
saw
are we
that.
doing
I
with our
saw that. Bryan,
lives?
so to totally break format real quick as we wrap up this podcast, I'm on. First of all, I've lost track. I think I'm on week 3 of not having a job, and I'm not even necessarily bored because I'm doing. This is one of 4 podcasts I'm doing currently, and I'm playing. I love video games. I'm playing video games. I've done a little streaming too. I'm having fun, but when every single day is so identical, it's tough. There's nothing to differentiate days. This week's a little different because we have the draft, which is nice. But last Monday, I could tell you what Tuesday was going to look like, what Wednesday was going to look like, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Every day is the exact same thing. And so that makes this draft so much more meaningful because this is the first time now in 3 weeks where there's something about my day on Thursday that's going to be different and exciting. And I think when I look back on this time period, it's something I find interesting. Is when we look back on this. By the way, I'm just going to derail all over the place, Bryan. When we talk about this time period 20 years from now, what are we going to call this era? Because it's going to have a name, right?
Man. Yeah, I mean the Coronacation.
That sounds too fun.
I don't know. It's
back in the quarantine days. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
it's gonna have a label.
Probably.
Think about it.
It's definitely gonna.
You don't need to have a label,
doubt.
but I think it's an interesting question. But when I do think when we look back on this, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I actually legitimately believe the NFL draft is going to have a place. Not for everybody. Not like history books, but for sports fans, it's going to have a memorable place of bringing us something that we needed.
Yeah.
To get really sappy here to end.
No, it's true. I mean, you know me. I've loved the NFL draft probably since 6th grade. I remember as a kid, I used to be in these piano competitions, and every single freaking year they would have it on the weekend of the NFL draft.
Dude, baseball for me. My parents always made me miss the draft for not a game, practice.
We're talking practice.
I'm not even kidding. I remember leaving practices, and I'm talking young, before I should have cared about the draft. I remember trying to get my mom and dad to tell me what happened so far. I remember walking off the baseball field and hearing that Jamarcus Russell was picked. I'm not kidding. I'm dead serious. I remember that day because the Lions picked 2, and I didn't even get to watch them take Calvin Johnson. I skipped.
It's tragic.
Some of you may not like this. I skipped a cousin's confirmation to watch the Lions take Matthew Stafford. I went over to their house, so I was there for the after party. But my parents and they let me stay to watch, which was maybe because of everything I missed growing up with baseball. But I feel you, man. I feel you.
Yeah. I just hope, I have such fond memories of me and my dad sneaking into the hotel bar to watch the draft. And um, I just I hope that people get into it because it's so much fun. If you pay attention even just a little bit, just to the first round, it's fascinating to watch how the teams maneuver and which players get picked and which players don't. But I think you're right. I think people who are just starved for sports are going to end up sitting down on Thursday night watching the NFL draft, and I hope this kind of stirs up just more and more interest in it.
Well, that's gonna do it, Brian. I will. I haven't done it in a while, but there was this little moment where I had hope that I was gonna get to watch the draft with you, either live broadcast or just in a party. I will miss getting to watch the draft with you. I did it like 2 or 3 years in a row in college and haven't done it since.
Mm.
Maybe one of these days. Enjoy the draft, and I look
You
forward
too, buddy.
to breaking down the Lions draft and our disappointment next Tuesday.
I'll bring the tissues.
All right. Thanks for watching. This has been Brendan and Bryan Talk NFL Draft.